Okay, so we're going to go through quick rigs, and it's one of the quickest way for you to set up a rig with a control system. It's actually quite handy, especially if you're making games or if you're testing things out, and you don't want to be investing too much time in doing your own custom kind of IK or FK system. Then this is usually a good way to go about it. So, for starters, I've grabbed a nice simple model, a mesh off of Turbo Squid. And I'm literally going to go straight over to, if I go rigging, and I have skeleton from the main menu, and then go down to quick rig. Now on quick rig, it normally has this, a nice simple one-click system and a step-by-step system. Now with a one-click system, pros and cons, usually mostly cons. As I said, it's kind of a quick and nasty way to get things done, and you're going to see what happens with one click. Now, it's gone ahead and done the wonderful thing, which is you've got your skeleton and your controls, and it's all there, and it's great. But look closer, and you're going to start seeing what the issues are. So, for starters, it's only got an algorithm that will tell it to kind of find specific spots within a mesh, and then just make an educated guess, pretty much. So, this is essentially what's happened. We have one end of a bone here, which if I now move around, as you can see from the top viewport, this is bending unnaturally. This really should be here, or at least this joint should be further up, but this is for the wrist. So as you can see, it's not set up very logically. It's just done the best it could under the circumstances. You can't hate it too much. So if you ever use auto rig, you've come across this and go, this isn't right for me. Come over here to the trash can. You'll delete the character. It'll ask if you want to get rid of everything. Say okay, and it will return your mesh as it was. Now, what we are going to be doing in quick rig is a step-by-step system. So first off, make sure that your mesh is in one piece and not separate pieces. If it is, there is a way for you to go about combining those elements, but I will address that in a separate video. But for now, this is the whole mesh. So we're going to go to our add quick rig character, which it's now done here. And with the geometry selected, I'm going to tell it to add the geometry. It's now got it as robo shape. That's now done. That step is finished. So I'm going to minimize this. And it's a good way just to keep track of where you're going, especially if it's the first time you're doing this. So we're on guides now. Now what kind of mesh this is, perfect and watertight meshes are usually for like super clean, super well flowed, fantastic geometry kind of meshes. To stay kind of on the safe side, you could go for an imperfect mesh or a polygon soup. I tend to go for polygon soup. Resolution's fine, you don't really have to change that. 256 is okay. What resolution means is that it's actually segmenting up the mesh into those amount of pieces in order for it to get a bearing, as it were, as to where everything sits. Now, the higher the resolution, the more segments it will break up. That doesn't necessarily mean you'll get a better result, but you're better off just leaving it on the default, otherwise you'll be sitting there forever waiting. So now that I've got this, I'm going to go to create an update. It's going to take a little while. And you should see quite quickly that a new skeleton with a rig will be created. There we go. Now we're still having errors with this. As you can see, just from here, the ends of the bones here near the wrists are straight out, almost outside of the model, which is no good. The hips are a little bit too squashed, they're too close together. There's a large space between here in the breastbone of the body, so there's a lot of adjustments that need to be done. And when it comes to your own models, you will have to adjust them anyway, depending on how you've modeled them. Which brings me on to my next bit. So we've gone ahead and minimized, guys. We're now on this one, user adjustment, guys. Now this command section here is really, really handy, and I'll show you why. So let's go into our front view. Try to use front and side, don't use the perspective, because you want to keep accuracy. Accuracy at this stage is really important. So first rule, don't move anything in the central column free-handedly, try to use the axes, and if you are, try to keep it to the y-axis, which is the up and down axes. And when you're working on the limbs, go for one limb at a time. Focus on that one area, make sure that it's exactly as you want it, and then move down to the next one. Now, just like with mirroring geometry, we're going to mirror positioning of these bones onto the other side, so we don't have to waste time, and it's a lot more accurate. So first off, I'm just going to start moving this into position. So if you remember last time, this was supposed to be the elbow, but considering this is a solid piece of metal, I doubt this is going to move very well. So this is what I've decided to do. I'm going to take this end of bone, I'm going to stick it just outside of the body here, and I'm going to grab this one and move it into the center of where the wrist joint is. And then I'm going to grab this one, which is supposed to be part of the shoulder joint. I'm actually going to move it here because that's where the rotation is. And the clavicle, I'm going to move that up somewhere around here. Okay. Now, I have my joint positioning from the front, but now I'm going to have to go to the top. And you'll see why, because even here, so far that one's fine, that was centered. This one could use a little tweak up, and this is definitely needing to be moved, so there we go. Okay, and I'm just going to quickly also check the positioning of this. Yep, that's good, so I'm quite happy with that. Now, I have those in position exactly where I want them, so I'm going to hold shift and multiple select these. And then I'm going to come back here to the quick rig menu, and because I'm working on the right side, I want to copy over to the left, so I'm going to be selecting this one, and it's gone ahead instantly, and it's reallocated the exact same limb bones on that side into the same position. So that's done. I can now move down to the leg and do the same thing. So again, grabbing, moving, and just trying to find that nice central spot. If you're unsure where something's meant to go, literally grab a hold of your own body. Just start, pinching on joints and feeling how they rotate, and look at someone else. Turn to your classmates and actually say, "Would you mind bending your arm for me? Let me see how you move," and that should give you some idea as to where something should sit. Don't follow blindly. You need to try and use your own body as reference to help you get an understanding as to where everything moves. So again, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm just shifting these joints into where I think they should be, based upon my personal knowledge of how bodies move. So this could be a bit more central. That one's okay, that one's okay. Okay, so again, this time I'm going to go from the side. So again, you've got, so you've got this one needs to come right into the center. And this one needs to come in, I'd say probably a bit more around there than anything else. Probably about here. And then we have this one, which is pretty good as it is. Now, this one down here should always be there. Don't remove it, don't shift it. There should always be a end of bone sort of right here on the sole of the foot. So it gives that realistic movement of it sort of hitting the floor or being dragged along the floor. So I'm quite happy with those ones. So again, I've done that leg. I'm now going to go ahead and select those. So this one, and this one. And this one. So they're all selected. I'm going to come up here, flip it over, and now that's all done. So the last part to do now is the spinal column. Now this is going to be a bit of a tough one because again we're working with a solid body, but he does have a few pivot points here, like around the neck, around the waist. So again, it's kind of like making those judgment calls. Now I know that skeletons, the way that we're built, we have our rib cage and we tend to sort of start our rotations from the midway point, sort of just below the armpit, so around there. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it to about there. Now, this is where things get a little bit more difficult. When it comes to the top of the spinal column, sometimes you can put it to the top of the head or just outside the head, like I've done with this one here, when it's a solid body. And then you have a solid bone running straight through, so then this doesn't deform. But sometimes some people want that extra bit of movement or realism. But in this case, because it's a solid sphere, I'm going to put this at the top of the head. And this is going to come up, and it's going to act as the pivot point at the base of the skull, which is where our neck would be. So that one's there, that one's there. This one can remain at the waist, although I think I'm going to bring it up slightly. This one can go here. Actually, I want this one slightly down. And this one can come up. There we go. So again, in this case, I still have to come back round. Now, just trying to see. They're central. Now, the one for the neck, I need that one to come slightly back. So that's at the base of the neck, which is where it's supposed to bend. And that will control the head, essentially. So if you can imagine a rod running through this, if it rotates from here, the entire head should bend forward. But I may have put that slightly a bit too much far back. Okay. Okay, so that's now all of our bones now customized, been tailored to fit the mesh that we're working with. So we've done that. Going on to the next part, which is step 4, we've got skeleton and rig generation. This should have skeleton and control rig. Go to create and update. And there we go. So that was nice and quick this time. And as you can see, we've got I would say a much better customized rig this time. So just to kind of, again, prove my point, if I come out here and I grab this to move. So that's 1 point, so that's nice. And then because we don't have that issue now in regards with bending of bending of a solid object, I can now do stuff like this, and I know it's going to behave. So this is exactly what I want. I wanted the bend to be right there. Okay, now you've probably already noticed the mesh isn't bending with the skeleton, with the framework. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do skinning, and skinning is essentially where we're going to tell the geometry where it's going to be attached to the skeleton, or vice versa. The skeleton takes control of the geometry, and whatever the bone does, the geometry around it will do. And that's going to be on the next video.